Buying a home? Don't panic. Just listen to the rest of this podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Home Inspection Authority's Straight Talk Podcast with me, John LaForme. I'm a CREA certified home inspector from Los Angeles, California, and the topics we discuss on this podcast are about buying homes, selling homes, inspecting homes. So if you're a home inspector, home buyer, real estate professional, this podcast is definitely for you. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, my guest is Marketing Director Stephanie Jaynes of Citadel Insurance Services, which is the parent company of the InspectorPro insurance program. And hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I remember reaching out to you guys months ago. Hey, if you guys are interested in doing something, that'd be great. And you reached out, and I'm like, yes, all right, that'd be great. I have a lot of questions for you.
And we have a lot of answers for you.
Yeah. By the way, I have, full disclosure, I do carry InspectorPro insurance. So anybody listening, this is not a paid promotion, nothing like that. This is just my curiosity and wanting to educate other home inspectors always a little bit more every day, because I think there's a lot of misconception and, just this needs to be talked about a little more. Because I know inspectors today, I just had one on my show recently who's actually going through a lawsuit because he didn't have insurance a couple of years ago. And it's like, really? Psh. Yeah,
I know. It's tough. It can happen. But hopefully with the conversation, I'm able to give some tips and things that will apply to people regardless of whether or not they're insured, regardless of who they're insured with. Because a lot of this stuff carries over. And obviously, we'd love it if every home inspector was a client of ours. But we're realistic too. And I think anybody, any home inspector, even people who are interested in becoming home inspectors can benefit from a conversation about risk management, because it's just a reality that you guys face.
And that's exactly what it is, risk management. So the first thing I wanted to ask you was, what is the most common claim you're getting? There's got to be some kind of a commonality there.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a question that I had when I started 6 years ago. So when I joined InspectorPro, I actually started, so most of my job right now is managing the risk management content that we produce. So we write articles on our blog, send out a newsletter, we write for the ASHI Reporter, we do a bunch on social media, we do appearances like this. But when I started, I was really interested, and the company was really interested in me making sure I actually knew insurance and knew home inspectors first. So I did a lot of renewal work. I talked to the underwriters and the claims department a lot, and I tried to I at least called 50 home inspectors a day.
Oh, wow.
I didn't always talk to 50 a day, but just trying to get a sense of what the day-to-day struggles are with risk management in the home inspection industry. And one of the questions that came up for me was, okay, there has to be a pattern. And when I had been hired, had been doing this for 10 years. I'm like, we've got the data. We just need to crack it open. So one of our big claims to fame, if you've ever been to our blog or looked at our newsletter, is our top claim series. And it started with the top 5 claims. So what I did is I got together with the owner of the claims department, essentially, that we use, of claims adjusters and attorneys who look at the claims when they come in. And we took the claims from the last 10 years and we divided them up by type. So think about types of allegations. And I can just go through like the top 5 that we kind of figured out. So the first one was water damage. So think, they find water damage on the floor, or they have some sort of leak that's happening. Water damage was number 1. Roof was number 2, closely associated with water damage. This is roof leaks. Roof leaks alone accounted for a huge percentage of the claims that we were receiving. Then came foundation issues. After that was mold. Mold was interesting because a lot of the mold claims were meritless, which we can go into what that means a little later.
Oh, I know what that means, but yeah, we can go into that.
Well, it surprised me.
Yeah.
I was thinking, again, when I came into the company, I was new to the home inspection industry and I was new to the insurance industry. So I kind of had the expectation of, okay, the only home inspectors who are getting mold claims are the ones who are looking for mold. No, it's actually the guys who exclude mold from their inspections, aren't sampling for it, aren't reporting on it, that are getting these claims later, which is a whole nother issue. And then the fifth most common one was plumbing, which most of the time was misidentifying the pipes, which if you think about the fact that most of the pipes in the plumbing in a home are concealed and not visible, it's really easy to do that, to see, okay, this is PVC, but behind the wall, there's, some polybutylene that you can't see. So that was kind of what started it off for us.
Right. So let me stop you right there for a second. Let's talk about the water damage / mold problems. First of all, myself, when I'm reporting, if I see any kind of staining, discoloration, or something that looks like a growth, whether it's black, green, brown, doesn't matter, I'm going to point that out. So would you say that in the claims that you get regarding moisture damage, that they're just not clarifying what it is, or do you have any insight on that?
So that actually was what created a follow-up piece to our top claim series. So notice how those top 5 claims are all E&O claims. Most of the claims we get are for errors and omissions insurance, which means these are things that home inspectors are getting accused of leaving out of their report or missing. They're not seeing these defects. We did a series on general liability claims as well, which we could go over. But more recently, what we did is we went back to that list. And instead of breaking it down by type, we broke it down by reason that the clients were pursuing in any way. So those types of things are it's outside the SOP. It was concealed during the inspection. And that's actually a really, really common one for foundation and mold. You just couldn't see it. That's why it's not getting brought up. Or out of the inspector's scope. One of the things we run into a lot of the time with water damage is that something was inaccessible during the inspection. Say the attic wasn't accessible because there were too many belongings in there, or there wasn't enough clearance to actually get up there. So you're looking from the hatch, and out over in the corner, that's where all of the evidence of, roof leak are, but you can't get in there.
It's always the place you can't get to.
Exactly. So when it comes to creating the best defense for yourself against that type of scenario, it all comes down to making sure that you are as explicit in your reporting as possible. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have full access to something, say that. If there's stuff in your way, take a picture of that stuff so you have evidence later on if it comes up, hey, you didn't notice all these problems in the attic. Well, I couldn't get into the attic and I said so, and I have a photo to prove it.
There you go.
And that's what allows us to give inspectors kind of the most ironclad defense, is having that evidence both written in the report and especially with photos.
That's something I push quite often with other inspectors I talk to. On several of my podcasts, it's come up. What about inaccessibility? So what I always tell other inspectors is, it's just as important to report what you didn't inspect as it is what you did inspect. So that is how I do it every day. And I take so many photos. It's almost like I'm a photographer. In the middle of my pictures, I'm doing a home inspection, because I take 300 to 400 photos of each house. I mean, I take a lot of pictures, and that's just because
it seems like a lot.
I've got it. Yeah, it is a lot, but there's no film processing, so it doesn't cost anything. It's all digital. So it's
right.
Just snap, 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 like a tourist. That's me.
We've had home inspectors complain about like the storage, that expense. If you're doing a lot of inspections, you're taking 400 of every house. Eventually, you're going to have to be paying for storage. But really, it's worth it because a lot of the claims that we are able to dismiss and get them to go away without the home inspector paying a dime, like a lot of times not even their deductible, those are ones where we have photos that weren't even necessarily put in the report, but are sitting in the cloud somewhere or on an external hard drive that show what the house was like on the day of the inspection. Because clients really just have a bad understanding of the fact that home inspections are a snapshot in time. But if you have the snapshots to prove what it looked like at the time, then these cases in which, there wasn't a problem during the inspection or it was concealed during the inspection, you can overcome those allegations a lot easier. One of my favorite claims to talk about, and we wrote about it in one of our blog posts, was a water damage claim. And the water damage was so bad by the time we got the claim, right? And are getting the pictures. There is a bubble protruding from the wall. You can see this bubble. You can touch the water bubble. It is gnarly. So we're looking at this thing. The inspector's looking at this thing like, okay, it's only a couple months after the inspection. We're like, how could you miss this? It's like a physical mass. Well, the home inspector goes back through his photos. Turns out the seller had strategically placed a blanket rack and a blanket in front of this wall. And the inspector, just taking as many pictures as he can of the area, took a picture of this hallway with the blanket and the blanket rack. And it's the exact spot where that bubble was. So it's very likely that that bubble maybe wasn't as big as it was by the time we got the claim, but it was definitely there and was concealed by the seller. And had the inspector not had that photo proving, hey, this was concealed from me and I don't move stuff, it would have been really hard to make an argument as to why he didn't see it because the damage was extremely pervasive and really obvious.
And it was already there. And it was obviously already there.
Mm-hmm.
So let me touch on that a little bit. So once again, the importance of photos and documenting the condition of the house the day you showed up to inspect it. That's the important part that other inspectors need to grasp. You can't just take a few pictures and leave. You just left a big door wide open for problems later that you can't defend against. So here's a good example of what I've come across multiple times. I get a phone call. Hey, John, did you notice the hole in the bathtub? I'm like, well, which bathtub? Typically, these homes that they're calling me about, they're like 5 bathrooms. So I ask them, pinpoint which bathroom you're talking about. They give me the instructions of where that is. So I go through my little archive of photos. Not a scratch on the tub. Turns out someone came in after me, changed a light bulb or fix, and the contractor put a hole in it. And I'm like, here's the photo. Never heard from him again. Without that picture, I would have had a hard time making them believe that wasn't there when I did it. Of course, I still would have said, hey, look, you need to find out who else was in the house after I left. And between the time I left and between the time you closed escrow and got your keys, there could have been anybody in there. So home inspectors really take a picture of bathtubs because that seems to be one of the bigger issues because the contractors put their ladders in there with no padding and no drop cloth sometimes. And they literally put a hole right in that if it's like a fiberglass tub or some kind of fragile material like that. Happens quite a bit. So that's how I cover myself.
And that happens. And I think your story illustrates it really well. You could have just said, I didn't do it. But then it turns into this he said, she said argument. And when you have the evidence of a photo, that's what really allows you to kind of close that door and walk away from the situation and turn them to the other people. We've had a lot of, just recently, we actually were doing, so we have a Facebook group that home inspectors can join that talks about risk management. And every Wednesday we share a claim from our archives. We call it Wednesday War Stories.
What's that called? I'm not familiar with that. What is that called? Your group?
Home Inspector Risk Management Group on Facebook. There's a link to it in our newsletter. There's a link on our website, but I can send you the link too, so you can put it in the notes for the podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
Yep.
it's a private group. We only let home inspectors be a part of it and us, but there are no other vendors there. And we try to keep it really focused on just risk management topics. So you can ask us questions or other inspectors questions. We have discussions about claims, discussions about things you can be doing in your agreements and your reports and things like that. It's just supposed to be a place where you can continue to receive relevant information as we receive it. But anyway,
Right.
a Wednesday war story that we just were working on was for a claim that they wanted the whole roof replaced. There were issues with a bunch of different shingles, tons of stuff was broken. And come to find out, they had a pest problem and tented it. And
that's always
while
the
the
problem.
contractors were tenting the property, they we couldn't, even the home inspector was like, I have no idea how they caused this much damage to the roof putting the tents up, but they did.
Yep.
But again, it was an instance in which he had the photos to prove, look, guys, this was not me. You need to talk to these contractors that were up on your roof.
First of all, the funny thing about that is the first thing I'd be like, well, who's the last person on the roof? That's the first question you ask. Oh, by the way,
honestly,
you forgot to mention there was a circus tent there.
Sometimes throw inspectors under the bus. I wouldn't be surprised if they asked
Every
the
day.
termite guy. The termite guy was like, well, didn't you just buy this house? What about the home inspector?
Yeah. We get thrown under the
you guys
bus.
are taking the pictures. The termite guy isn't. So.
Yeah, we get thrown under the bus by people we refer sometimes. So like if I say, hey, look, you know what? Your HVAC system looks like Mickey Mouse installed it. You need to get an HVAC guy out here like right away. And that guy shows up and then says, well, why didn't he tell you about this, this, and this? And I have to talk to the guy. Hey, man, I'm the reason why you're here. Why you throw me under the bus?
Right.
I'm bringing everything to their attention, and they did the right thing by calling you. But you don't have to make me look like a clown. I'm not a specialist like you are. We know so much, and we only do so much regarding the HVAC system. So there's no need of that. But that happens to everybody all the time.
Yeah, and it's an important distinction. I mean, it's one of the things that you can actually point out in your inspection agreements and reports. Remind your clients that, hey, like my inspections are, kind of just basic looks at these different various systems and components in the home. And if you want the crazy level of expertise, that an HVAC professional would have, you got to call him. And sometimes it's appropriate to do that, to follow up.
That can segue us right into my contract that you have in front of you. I want to talk about.
I have a copy of it.
A little highlighted. There's two words in here that are highlighted: client's duty. So let's talk about that and what that means. So I'm going to read it. Client's duty. Client agrees to read the entire written report when it is received and promptly call inspector with any questions or concerns regarding the inspection or the written report. The written report should be the final exclusive findings of the inspector. So a lot of times that just doesn't happen. And then to add to that, it's just when we recommend further evaluation, that's what it means. Don't ignore it. And then 6 months later, call me and go, hey, why didn't you tell me about that? Well, I did. It's on page 38. Why didn't you do anything about it then? Well, I want you to pay for it. Well, I'm not paying for it. Sorry. That's how that happens. So the clients need to understand too that, they have a part in this. They hired us. We're giving them instructions. If they choose to ignore our reports, you're rolling the dice.
Right. And we actually did an article, I think it was last year, about ways to encourage clients to read reports, because one of the complaints that we received from just talking to home inspectors and from just handling claims, again, one of the top 10 reasons home inspectors receive claims from clients are for things that were in the report. But we put in parentheses the unread report because they wouldn't be filing the claim if they had actually read it and seen that it was addressed there. So It is a really difficult problem to overcome. And I think one of the best ways that we've found to encourage clients to read the report is to just remind them that your verbal comments are not the report and are not the inspection findings. I think it's great when home inspectors have walkthroughs with their clients at the end of an inspection. It's a great opportunity to point out some of the big stuff and answer questions. But you've got to preface that and end that with, hey, this is not the report. You've got to read the report. And then for anybody who's using like a report writing software, a lot of the softwares now are really great and have features in which you can send them the report and then send them a follow-up email with the report and be like, hey, did you see this? Hey, do you have questions about this? So that it kind of stays top of mind. Because in the client's defense, buying a home, like there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. There's a lot of stress and pressures as you're trying to close and get moved in and do all those different things. Right. So once they kind of check the inspection box, they might think, okay, I'm done. I got the inspection. They might be forgetting, to kind of really check that box off, I need to make sure I read the report and get any of that stuff addressed. It's not just your negotiation tool. It's also an information tool as you're moving into this home, knowing what you're actually going to be dealing with when you're living there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I do that. I do walkthroughs with people. Sometimes we don't literally have to walk around because some of the things I have to explain, they can't see because they're under the house or up in the attic. So I'm not going to put them on my ladders or make them crawl into the house.
Right. We don't recommend having them follow you up the ladder.
Yeah, no, I actually have stickers on my ladder. Do not climb, inspector use only. Because too many times I turn around and there's a customer on the roof behind me. I'm like, whoa, what the hell are you doing? Get off of here. So yeah, that's a good point for inspectors too. I would put some labels on your ladder just so you can say that you tried to keep them off the roof. You know what I mean? You can't stop them from climbing a ladder. You can't stop any of that, but unless you're at the bottom of it, but that's not going to happen. So back, as far as my agreement goes, I want to kind of go into an actual real experience. Like I'm the insured. So for example, use me as an example. I say to you, hey, look, this morning before you logged into this podcast, I got a letter. I got an email from a client saying, hey, you missed something big on my house. And if you don't do anything about it, I'm going to take you to small claims court or I'm going to sue you. Well, first of all, small claims court is not part of the deal because it's mandatory arbitration in the agreement. So how do you deal with that? If somebody files a small claims case against me when they shouldn't have in the first place?
So it all comes back to your agreement. When it comes to dispute resolution, which is what it's called, somebody has a problem with what you did and they're asking to resolve it. There's a clause or a section of your contract that should address dispute resolution and resolution of disputes. Recently, just actually back in January, we had InspectorPro released state-specific contracts for our inspectors that they can use. And we actually give you discounts for using our contract because we're very confident that they work, because we didn't just base them on the standard of practice in your state, but we also base them on case law in your state, our claims experience over the last 12 years in your state. So there are some nuances in there that are really unique to us that we've found to be successful just based on dealing with allegations and claims and lawsuits in your state. But going back to that resolution of disputes thing, in our resolution of disputes provision, we actually are all about small claims court. In the last 7 years, we've had really, really, really good results come out of small claims court. But if the dispute exceeds the jurisdiction, meaning they're asking for more money or it's more complicated than a small claims court can handle, that's when we send them to binding arbitration. But we even preface that with, but you got to send them to an arbitrator who has knowledge and experience in the home inspection industry. Because it's not enough to just send them to arbitration and things like that if the arbitrator has never seen a home inspection case in their life. So we have a few arbitration companies that we recommend just because we've had, again, really good results with them.
So, all right. So let me get into that a little deeper. So
yeah,
if a small claims court case comes in and I get served, I then have to send that to you, my insurance company. And then you decide if your company is going to follow through with that through a small claims process. Is that what you're saying?
So no. So I realized I didn't answer your question, so I'm sorry. So if you're getting served with anything, the first step that you need to make, and even before you get served, if you're getting any sort of complaint that you think might turn into a claim, we recommend bringing it to your insurance company. Because if they're like us and have a pre-claims process in place, you might be able to nip that thing in the bud before it even becomes a lawsuit. So if you get served, call your insurance company. They'll open up a claim, assuming that it qualifies as a claim. And if there is a lawsuit and a money demand, it is a claim, right?
Yep.
And then they're going to look at it and they're going to compare it to your agreement. So in your case, where your agreement says, hey, stuff needs to go to arbitration, not court, the first thing we're going to try to do is contact whoever is representing the claimant and be like, hey, listen, they signed this contract. Here's a copy of it. It says arbitration. You can't take us to court. That's the first battle that we'll do with them. Because you're totally right. We are going to get way better results for our home inspectors if we can keep it in a small claims court or arbitration scenario, because if we don't have to hire additional representation for you other than just our claims adjusters and lawyers internally, that is way cheaper. We don't have to be, adding those expenses to your loss run, which is the record upon which, your claims history is. And if we don't have to do that, I mean, we might be able to just handle it internally and not even charge you your deductible. So that's our ideal scenario. So the first thing we would do is try to get it in a small claims court or arbitration situation. If for some reason we couldn't, most commonly the reason would be you didn't have a properly executed agreement. An example of that is you got the agreement signed, but after the inspection.
Right.
Because of that, we might not be able to enforce that dispute resolution, in which case we might end up in a court scenario. Does that answer your question?
It does. But of course, I have more questions.
Ask more questions then.
Yeah. So that's a good point you brought up. Inspectors out there, you have got to stop letting people talk you into not signing your agreements before you start the job. You just got to put your foot down and say, this is my policy. I'm not leaving the house, because I will not leave the house without inspection agreement signed prior to, typically a couple days before, unless it's a next day inspection, and payment in full. That's how I run my business. And when I get there, all I have to focus on is doing the job. I don't have to worry about paperwork. I don't have to worry about collecting money. I can just spend time with the customer. And I think it's just a much simpler process, because I like convenience. And Spectora software provides me with all that convenience with my scheduling emails and everything else, and the ability to run payment through there. It just makes life so much simpler. So the other question I have, back to the small claims part. So if it has to go to small claims, who is the person who physically goes to the small claims court and defends it?
Typically you, but we prep you.
Right.
So one of the benefits of small claims court that we've found is, again, we don't have to hire somebody to represent you, but that doesn't mean we're sending you in alone. Essentially what we'll do is our claims team will coach you and practice with you on the phone and give you your point-by-point rebuttals. They'll tell you everything you need to bring, what to wear, how to address the judge, how many copies of everything to bring. And we'll go through, because one of the things that happens when you get sued, not everybody knows this, is the claimant has to put into writing what their claim actually is. Right. So they have to say, here are all my issues. Boom, 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 boom. So we go through those accusations one by one with you so that you're prepared with a strong rebuttal against all of those things.
Right.
And we give you things to say verbally to rebut those things. We'll also help you to pick out things either in your agreement, or report, or your photo archive, or all three that support your claims. So like if the argument is you missed the mold in my house, okay, let's keep it really simple. The mold was behind the wall. Here's the evidence that you ripped open the wall after I was there. Here's a picture of the wall from when I was there. Here's the lack of all of the signs of mold on inspection day. If you took any sampling, here are the negative samples that I took around the area that you say you found mold. And we help you and assist you so that you're as prepared to go into that situation as you possibly can be. Now,
that's good.
In a different scenario, in which you do require representation, who represents you kind of depends on the state. We have different lawyers and attorneys that we've worked with in the past that we have good experiences with that will send your case to if you need to appear in court with representation. If we don't have a good experience with an attorney, we're not calling them back to represent another home inspector. So we try to focus on people who have experience in the industry, but have also gotten good results for our inspectors. Because the bottom line is, and we totally get that as the insurance company, we are made out to be the bad guys a lot. But at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. We want your claims outcomes to be as positive as possible. Because if you're saving money, we're saving money too. That's just the reality.
Right.
So everything try to get the best representation. Yeah. Go ahead.
So everything you just described sounds like a real pain in the butt. Okay, because shed some realistic light on that. Okay, now we're talking about arranging paperwork. We're talking about getting on phone calls with your insurance company to get the tips that you just mentioned, the help that you just mentioned. All that takes time. That takes hours and hours and hours of time to prepare to go to small claims court. And I'm talking from experience.
Right.
So why I want to share all this. So the reality of it is it's a real big inconvenience, and it's possible you could spend money on your deductible. It's possible you're losing jobs because you have to appear somewhere or you have to be on a phone call to get more information. It's going to be a real big nuisance to you. So it's real important to take each job as seriously as possible. Every day you go to work, try not to be a volume inspector, because when you're doing too many inspections in one day, I'm telling you are going to miss something, or you're going to forget to report a part that was really important. Like, what Stephanie mentioned earlier is the not mentioning you couldn't get in the attic, and all of a sudden there's a problem from the attic. So I'm just trying to really put some urgency on this, because that's the reality of it. And that's
I think that's one of the reasons why, 6-7 years ago, we as a company kind of shifted gears too. We realized with all of the experience that we've had defending claims and with all the patterns that we could observe from the claims that we've handled, we realized that there were things that home inspectors could be doing to prevent them. And that preventing claims was so much better than dealing with claims.
Yes.
So if you look at our blog, if you read any of our articles, if you listen to our appearances in various webinars and podcasts, the things that we mostly talk about are, okay, what are the things that you guys can do now at all of your inspections to prevent complaints from ever reaching your cell phone or your inbox? And that's what is really important is putting practices in place so that you don't even have to get the nasty phone call and don't have to go through this process if you don't have to.
A good mindset to have when inspecting a house is, how would I defend that? If I don't write that up, if that looks like I need to write it up and I decide, well, to me, it's really not a big concern. How would you defend it? You got to think about that when you're looking at it going, could I defend myself here? I'm sorry, but this is the business we're in. You have to start thinking like you're an attorney because how can I defend this? How can I prove this condition today? I can take a photo. That's how. I can write it up in my report. You know what? There's an issue here. It's kind of an anomaly. I can't figure out what it is. I definitely want to point it out and let my client know that, hey, there's something going on here, but I can't identify what I'm looking at. So it could be whatever, a hump in the wall, could be a 4-inch drain pipe in the wall, and it's an old construction where they have to go around the pipe like this, and they have these little humps in the wall. Hey, why is there a hump in my wall? Oh, it's because the house was built in 1920, and back then they just, they weren't that super attention to detail, I guess, on those things. They didn't believe in furring out walls to fit the pipe. So just stuff like that. So those are the things you can do to prevent these things. Yeah, I don't want my phone. I don't want to answer those emails. It's like, and when I do get those emails, typically it's a bunch of nonsense. It's a cosmetic thing. It's this, it's that. But, I do call. I call them right back, which is a really good point I want to make. If you do have somebody with a complaint, don't ignore them. Just call them right away and say, hey, what's going on? Okay, just let them talk. A lot of times they'll just hang themselves by them talking to you about what they think is wrong. And then when they're done talking, then ask them, well, did you follow through and get the further recommendation? Further evaluation that I recommended for you. Oh, no, I didn't do that. Well, why didn't you do that? Well, that's why you're calling me now. Well, I gave you instructions. You didn't follow it. So I really can't do nothing for you. That's how I address it, if that's the case.
And it's really smart. Yeah. There's a direct correlation between promptness and how low your payments can go. And when I say how low your payments can go, I mean spending $0 on a complaint, right? That's the ideal.
Yeah. Right.
That's our goal too, is how can we get the inspector to pay $0 and not see a premium increase later? That's the goal. So when it comes to addressing client complaints, you're absolutely right. Getting back to them quickly is a huge part of it. Ignoring them doesn't work because ignoring them just makes them madder. And that's usually when they find the time to hire an attorney. It's in those first few moments that you're able to have a more rational conversation and hopefully point them in the right direction. You were talking a lot about, when you get the email or you get the call, a lot of the time it's bogus stuff. And it's true. Back when we were looking at types of claims, one of the other things that I tried to establish with the claims team is I asked them, okay, how many of these are legit? Like the inspector messed up. It's 100% their fault. They missed that defect. They're totally liable. And again, we went through the thousands of claims that we had seen, and turned out it was 80% of the claims that we had received in the past 10 years were meritless, meaning the inspector at least wasn't fully at fault, or the claim was somewhat exaggerated, something that made it where it was like, you know what, this shouldn't have been an insurance claim. So when you're faced with that reality, 80% of these things are frivolous or meritless, you have to come at it thinking, you had kind of given it the CYA mindset, which some inspectors don't like. And to those inspectors, I would say, come from it then as an educator. Pretend every client you have is a first-time home buyer and they're 12 years old. You have to really break it down for them, because the things that are really obvious, that it's a visual, non-invasive home inspection. Well, when HGTV is showing people pulling walls down and, doing all sorts of things to the property to find problems with it, they're more like flippers than home inspectors.
Yep.
You realize that your clients don't have the same expectations as you do. And the only way to
same knowledge as you,
to reset those expectations. Yeah.
Right. They don't have the same knowledge. So I kind of go by this rule. Don't assume the person next to you understands what you're saying, because what is common knowledge to you does not mean it's common knowledge to the person next to you. And if you can kind of use that mindset when you understand, I never expect my homeowners to know what I'm exactly doing, because 99.9% of the time they don't. But I do expect them to know what a doorknob is, and what a
Right.
window is, and what a door is. So those are things I expect them to know. So just kind of use that mindset, as would be my recommendation to other inspectors. Remember, it's so normal to you to call this one thing out because you see it every day. But remember, it could be a first-time home buyers. Remember, some people never lived in houses; they lived in apartments their whole life, and then they're walking into a detached single-family home, and they're like, "Whoa, what is all this?" What this is your responsibility, is what it is. If it breaks, you fix it. No more landlord, So that's how it works. So that's how I address
And
that.
I think it reminds me of, again, one of the top 10 reasons clients file claims. One of them that we've been seeing more and more over the last 3 years is that the issue was acknowledged by the inspector, but the issue is more severe or pervasive than the client understood from just talking to the inspector or reading the report. I'll give you an example. Let's say the client has a leak, and you just say, okay, you have a leak. And the client is like, okay, maybe a leak doesn't sound very extreme to them. But in this case, this leak, if not resolved, could create extensive damage to the property. Yep. So if they don't have that sense of urgency, they may not promptly fix it and then blame you for all of that damage that occurs later.
Yeah.
So it's important to make sure that you are using layman's terms when explaining what something is. A leak is great layman's terms. You have a leak.
Yeah. Yep.
But then sometimes you need to, depending on the situation, break down what that actually means.
Right.
So that the client understands whether or not this is something that needs to get fixed now, or if it's cosmetic or whatever it is.
Right.
So that the level of understanding there is equal. Because a lot of times, even if you do report on it, there's not an understanding of what that information actually entails.
Report writing is a whole nother episode on the podcast.
Yeah.
Report writing it can go so in depth, and I got to get on that myself. So now let me jump back a little bit to your explanation of the small claims issue. And I brought that up because I got dragged into that a few years ago, and it was completely meritless. It was a bunch of nonsense from the word go, and that's why I asked you that specific question the way I did. So you answered it very well, because you answered it the opposite of what my old insurance company answered it as. But I'm not going to say it was the insurance company's fault. I'm going to say it was a lawyer that they hired here in California to help me through this. So my contract had the mandatory binding arbitration clause in it. And here I got somebody sending me papers for small claims court. I'm like, well, they're already breaching the contract because it was signed way in advance. There was no question about the legitimacy of a signed contract. That was done days before I got there. The client never even opened the report for months, which my software told me. So, right. And all of a sudden they move in 90 days, 120 days later, and then I get a call 4 or 5 months later. Oh, there's mold here. Why didn't you tell us? I'm like, well, let's look at the report. I've done hundreds of homes since then. So I had to pull it up, look at the report. And I'm like, ma'am, I showed you 14 different areas of moisture damage in the house. Your own realtor was there, and we talked about how musty it smelled upstairs. You were told multiple times to get a mold inspection. And then she starts going into all these pointless conversations with me. And I went and looked at it, and there was some staining under a cabinet. It was just on the back part of the cabinet itself, and it was all dry. I don't know when it happened. And it was crazy. So I contact my insurance company, and They put me in touch with a lawyer, and then he ignores the small claims part. I'm like, I called him up and I said, I got a binding arbitration clause here. Why are you trying to give me instructions to go to small claims court? Did you even address this with them? And all I heard was silence on the phone. The lawyer went silent. And by the way, I was on the phone with the adjuster. We had a 3-way call going. It's the adjuster. Am I saying that right?
So
yeah.
to talk about who the parties are for people who are unfamiliar, a claims adjuster is somebody who works for the insurance company and handles claims. So when you file a claim, it goes first to an adjuster. Adjusters aren't always attorneys. Sometimes they are. We have plenty of adjusters who are both. But they're licensed specifically to look at and kind of manage the claim for the insurance company.
Right.
So when you do get assigned a lawyer, if you do get assigned a lawyer, the adjuster is the one who would do that for you. But they're still the ones that are kind of acting sometimes as an in-between with you guys, but mostly an in-between for you, between you and the insurance carrier as things are developing.
Right. So that's what happened. And I was concerned, I've been self-employed for a long time, not in this business, other businesses in the past. So I've had to deal with some legal stuff. So I kind of had a understanding of how these things should unfold. And I wasn't seeing that with what was going on with this lawyer. It's like first of all, I never talked to the lawyer directly. I kept getting his assistant. I'm like, well, I don't like that. First of all, I should have been in touch. He should have called me and said, hey, this is what's going on. We got you covered. We're going to help you with this. I didn't get that kind of service. So, and then when I called him out on the fact that he didn't even address the binding arbitration with the plaintiff, that was it. Then he goes, okay, well, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. Then what happens the next day? He sends him a letter saying that they breached the contract and it got dismissed.
Well, there you go.
I literally saved my own butt on that one from getting dragged into the small claims.
I think something that's really difficult. This is both like a cautionary tale about some insurance providers, but also a cautionary tale against not having insurance. Because the reality is, it's one thing to inspect homes. It's another thing to manage and address complaints that are coming from clients for home inspections.
Right.
The home inspection industry is small. There are, if you trust the U.S. Census on their predictions of how many home inspectors there are in a given year, there are only about 40,000 in the whole nation. That's a very small number when you compare it to a lot of other professions. So because it's so niche, it requires a lot of industry expertise and knowledge, which unfortunately you're not just going to run into if you try to hire an attorney yourself or are working with an insurance provider who perhaps goes from working with home inspectors 1 minute to working with appraisers or another type of contractor or doctors or whatever. That specialization is really important because, I would guess, not knowing this attorney personally, I would guess he didn't even understand the importance of a pre-inspection agreement. Maybe he was sent a copy of your contract, but didn't even look at it. Whereas because our claims team only handles home inspector claims, that's all they look at. They know, okay, first thing we're going to do, look at this agreement and see if there's anything that we can do with that.
Yeah.
Second thing we're going to do, look at the report, see if there's anything we can do with that. Third thing we're going to do, look at any extra notes or photos that were taken that didn't end up in the report, but are still evidence from inspection day. But if you aren't dealing with home inspectors every single day and the complaints that come against them, you don't really know how to address those kinds of things, which is why, like I said, at least here at InspectorPro, our team only works with home inspectors. We don't work with any other types of insurance and any other types of claims. And a lot of the attorneys we hire, and even going back to our conversation about contracts, the arbitration company that we recommend people go through. The main one that we recommend is, let me make sure I get their name right as I'm talking aloud, Construction Dispute Resolution Services. And you can hear in the name, they only work with the trades. So they see lots of home inspector complaints and lots of complaints that have to do with residential and some commercial properties. And because of that building knowledge, that enables them to make much more sympathetic verdicts on the complaints that are coming through than your typical arbitrator or small claims court judge, who is going to be really sympathetic to the client because they're the one they can identify with, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Right. So what about attorney's fees clause? Do you have that in your contracts?
I wasn't going to call you out on this
No, I don't mind.
podcast, but because you brought it up now,
That's fine. That's fine.
So we are really, 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 really against attorney's fees clauses. So to catch people up on what this means, so an attorney's fees provision is a clause in your pre-inspection agreement that awards legal expenses to one of the parties in a dispute. So an example of an attorney's fees provision would be in any arbitration or legal action in which we're found to be without fault, the client agrees to reimburse us for any attorney's fees incurred in our defense of the proceeding. So the idea behind this provision is home inspectors throw it in there because they think, well, what's a good way to deter litigation? Again, we're talking all about risk management. What's a way in which I can prevent somebody from filing a lawsuit against me? Well, an attorney's fees provision sounds really good because I'm basically telling them, hey, if you take me to court and it's not my fault, you're paying for it. And that at least should give them pause. So that's the logic behind it. The logic is sound. The problem is it doesn't work. And it can come back to bite you. So we actually wrote an article about this for the Reporter in July of 2020. And we used Michelle Shishilla, who is pretty well known in the home inspection space because of her work with a couple other vendors and her speaking at some conferences. But anyway, the Shishillas actually had an attorney's fees provision in their agreement, and it came back to bite them. Essentially what happened was they got a complaint. It was mold behind wallpaper, so it was pretty obvious that they weren't at fault, but it escalated into this huge claim that didn't just bring them in, but also brought in the sellers, the listing agent, a bunch of other people involved in kind of a cover-up that happened.
Right. Whoever went to the party.
The Shishillas were dismissed from the court case.
Yeah.
But due to the provision in the inspection contract, the Shishillas were still obligated to pay the clients thousands of dollars in attorney's fees because the ultimate claim against the sellers and the real estate agent was still good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the Shishillas weren't at fault at all. They didn't do anything wrong. They were dismissed from the case. They didn't have to pay anything in damages for negligence to the client. Mm-hmm. But they did have to pay attorney's fees because of that provision being in their contract. So the reason we say don't do it is just because if you are just one of a bunch of people named in a lawsuit, and any one of those people was negligent and is legit, like at fault, you could end up paying attorney's fees with everybody else on that list, even if you're dismissed from the court case generally. It's just a very dumb reality.
I don't know. I'm going to have to get you on a phone call with Greg Pyfrom, who is, I'm not sure if you heard of Greg. He's out here in California. He's a home inspection attorney. And I've had many, many talks with him. I've actually had him go through my contracts in the past, and he demands it. He's like, you got to have this in here. And now in different states, it could work differently. Would you agree?
I would also agree that
Yeah.
depending on the case, it can work out differently, right?
Sure.
I mean, we have seen attorneys fees provisions work out in people's favor before. Sure. We've seen it happen.
Yeah,
but because we've seen it happen in the reverse, we just recommend like, hey, with the ideal that because what happened to the chinchillas is the opposite of the ideal. You having to pay money when you're not at fault. Yeah. That's kind of the thing that we're trying to avoid. So while it might be satisfying to get people to pay your attorney's fees if you end up being able to prove that you weren't liable, because it can hurt you when you aren't liable to begin with, we just recommend against it.
Right. Yeah. So you made a good point. There was a whole bunch of people involved in that case. And so when I try to explain that to other people, I'm like, look, everybody who came to the party has to clean up. And that's basically what it is. So just because, the termite guy did something wrong, they're going to go after him. They're going to name me. They're going to name everybody that was at the party, everybody who walked in the door, any contractor, any inspector, the buyer, who knows? The seller, everybody's going to be involved. So that just goes hand in hand with a legal proceeding when there's a whole bunch of people involved, because they're just going after who's got the deepest pockets. And if you can prove you have no pockets, well, they might kick you loose.
Right. And that's actually an argument that a lot of people have for not carrying insurance. People say, well, insurance money puts a target on our back. In our experience, and obviously we're biased because we're an insurance company, that isn't the case. And one of the ways in which we can kind of prove that is because there are some states that require insurance and some states that don't. And there's no correlation between, hey, these are the states that require insurance, they get way more claims, versus these are the ones that don't, they get way less.
Right.
The only people who need to know you carry insurance are you, and maybe if you're doing some inspections for a builder and you need to provide some proof of insurance, you show them. Right. But there was one guy, this is a funny story, one client of ours that I talked to years ago. He had 4 claims or something come in like a month.
Oh.
And all of them were meritless. But it gave me pause. And I was just like, what is this guy doing? If anything, right? I don't know. It could be terrible luck. But what is happening?
He's the common denominator.
That is causing him to just magnetize them, right?
Yep.
Well, turns out that he thought a good marketing strategy would be to market how high his insurance limits were. So on the homepage of his website, and also when he would meet potential clients and even work with like real estate agents.
Hang on, I got to scratch my head about that one. Okay,
I know. He would talk about, well, and it kind of makes sense. So some different people, like I'm doing work on my backyard right now, in preparation for summer. And one of the general contractors that, came over, one of the ways he tries to differentiate himself is he says, hey, I'm licensed and insured. Not everybody, who's coming in to give you a bid is licensed and insured. But he wasn't showing me, I carry $2 million in coverage, Right. But this guy was. I mean, a copy of his proof of insurance certificate was on his website, and I had to call him and be like, this is a terrible idea. This is not working in your favor. That is the only time in my experience being here for 6 years that I've seen insurance be a target, but it's because he was advertising it as if it was free money. As long as you're not doing that,
right.
Nobody is going to come after you assuming that you have insurance money, and it should increase your liability.
Right.
So based on our state data.
So you kind of, your little story there, that was a good story, by the way. That was really good. That's the first I've heard of something like that. Is he still your client?
I had like a stress hit. He is. Thankfully, like, other than that, great inspector. Like, when it
Good,
came
good.
to defending those claims, they were legit money grabs. Like, he didn't do
Yeah.
anything wrong.
Good,
It's
good,
still headaches of having to deal with those things, but he had good quality work,
good, good.
and he'd been in
Good
the
to hear.
industry for a long time. He'd been an inspector for over 10 years. This was like a move to try and compete with some of the newer guys who were coming into his area,
Yeah.
to try to differentiate himself. But I was like, this just isn't the way to do it. And I think part of the reason I was the one making the phone calls, I was the marketing person telling him
Yeah.
that this wasn't a good marketing strategy and that there were other ways to market his business. But
I actually had years ago, I did this inspection, and I can kind of picture the house to this day. It was a small house in Van Nuys area, and client hires me. I show up, everything seems fine. I go through the whole place. His realtor was there, and his dad was with him too. And then I don't know, maybe a couple, 3-4 weeks later, I get this email, and it's kind of really vague, but it's got a picture under the house, and it says, "John, it looks like you missed something." And it's just a photo under the house. There's no arrow. There's no
explanation
indication
of
of,
what it
there's no
is.
explanation at all. So I'm like, I'm not sure what you're showing me. Can you please explain what you're trying to point out here? And I never got a response back. And then about a month later, I get a phone call from a woman saying that she's representing this client. And she goes, "Well, I'm sure you're aware he's a disabled vet." And I'm like, "Well, no, how would I know somebody's a disabled vet? He walked in the house by himself. He walked in without any kind of assistance. He just seemed like a normal guy. I mean, why would you think I should know that?" "Oh, you didn't know that?" I'm like, "Well, no, I didn't know that." "Well, what's the problem?" She was trying to get me to give her my insurance policy. She was a scam. I don't even know if that guy wound up buying the house. He may not even bought it, and somebody else showed up. "Oh, I'm going to try and scam this guy for some." They were just trying to get my policy number. I'm like, "Lady, if you have a complaint, I'm going to send you a form. You can fill it out, and that's where it all starts." And I never heard from her again. But she was literally just trying to get me to give her my policy number and who to call and file a claim. It was a scam. It was a total scam.
That's so strange. But yeah,
It
it's
was very
another
strange.
reason to just, that's one of the perks of having an insurance provider you trust too, is just being able to kind of call us in situations like this and be like, what do I do? What information do I need to collect? How do I respond? Because yeah, it's different all the time. We've got people who call us because the real estate agent is getting sued, and they're like, should I be worried yet? Because their reports are getting passed around to people who weren't their clients. They're like,
Oh,
do I
that's
need
it.
to
Yeah.
be worried? How do I deal with
Yeah.
this? So finding an agent that you trust,
Yeah.
that you can call up with questions like this, because we've heard it before most of the time,
Hell,
can be really beneficial.
Let me ask you this question too. This has been happening quite a bit, and some people are kind of sneaky about it. Some of the clients and the realtors are kind of sneaky about it. So I start doing my overview at the end of the inspection, and they start recording me. I'm like, "Are you recording me?" "Well, yeah, because we want to send this to the client." "But I'm not here to do a verbal. I'm not here to do a video inspection. I don't want you recording me." "Well, because I'm just giving you a couple bits and pieces of what's going on with the house. I have to go home and just detail out a complete report for you." It says, if I do any kind of talking right now, it's not to be recorded because you're going to take it out of context. And I'm not finished. I have to look at all the pictures underneath the house I took. I have to look at all the photos. I'm not done yet. So please don't do that. And they just think it's normal just to throw on their camera and start videotaping you. Do you guys have a problem with that?
I haven't heard about that phenomenon before. Most of the things I've been talking with inspectors and claims teams about right now is the opposite. Since doing our article on body cams a couple years ago, we're having more and more inspectors interested in wearing them and using them. So we've gotten a lot of calls about, okay, how do I do this? What do I do if a client is upset by the fact that I'm wearing a body cam, or like the seller is because it's their house and their stuff. Like, how do I approach that? But I haven't heard of issues with the opposite where people are recording you. And that can be tricky. But going back to the thing that we were talking about earlier, which is the things I say to you verbally are not my official report.
Right.
I think the easiest way to encapsulate that is to write that statement in your inspection agreement. And
it's already in there. Yep.
Yep. And that's the best thing you can do. Yeah. Because then should they use their secret video footage, like maybe you weren't able to catch them in the act and say, hey, please don't film me.
They're like this.
Like, let's just not do that.
Oh man. Yeah. So I kind of deter that.
If you didn't notice, for example, and then it was brought against you later, you could just say, hey, my verbal comments and my written comments are different. Like, I was able to find things in the photos that, changed my verbal statement. So you need to honor those instead. Yeah. And the best way of dealing with that is having it in your agreement and in your report.
Yep.
But weird. I haven't heard that. California seems to be, you guys start some of the weird trends that we see. We have a lot of our insured inspectors come out of California. But also California, as you know, and I could say this because I already told you I'm a California native. Yeah. But a lot of like the weird kind of complaints and things kind of start sometimes in California, like the report sharing I mentioned earlier. Those are phenomenons that will start to bubble up in California before they bubble up in some other places sometimes for us.
So I want to cover how inspectors say they can't afford insurance. This is just cracks me up. Okay. I'm sorry. This to me is just absolutely ridiculous. If you are a business owner, just the fact that you said you're a business owner, you have expenses right out of the gate, whatever that is. Okay. It's going to be whatever kind of business you're in, you're going to have expenses. This is one of those expenses that you make room for. Okay. At the very beginning of your expense list, my insurance, is my insurance paid? Is my insurance paid? Just like your car insurance. Even if you buy a used car that's paid for, you pay cash for it, you're still going to get insurance, right? I think you're kind of a dummy if you don't. So I don't mind saying that. Now, my policy, if I just pay cash for it, it's like $2,800 or $2,900, something like that. But I financed it because I'm in no rush to give you my money. So I just kind of do the finance option because that's what I like to do. But that boils down to like just over $250 a month. So to put this in perspective, if you're a home inspector who only wants to do one inspection a month, well, then I understand that this kid's not affordable. You can't afford to have insurance because you're only making, I don't know, $400-500 a month. But if you're a serious home inspection company or a serious home inspector who's actually out there doing at least one a day, if you did one a day, that's like 30 houses a month. And if your average price is $400, how can you not afford to pay $250 for insurance a month? It doesn't make any sense to me. So I just look at people and scratch my head going, what are you talking about? You can't afford insurance. You can't afford not to have insurance.
Yeah, I think for people who are in states where insurance is not required, it feels much more like an optional expense. Right. In large part because you're paying quite a bit at the gate, especially if you try to pay in full. And because a lot of guys, when they're starting out or maybe working part-time, the number of inspections that they're doing aren't as high. So they figure my likelihood of receiving a claim isn't as high, which there is some truth to that. There is a correlation between the number of inspections you perform and your likelihood of a claim, meaning the more inspections you perform, the more likely you are to receive a claim, just because it's just like the number of times you get into a car, the more likely you are to get into an accident.
Right.
Similar. For me, there are kind of like two major arguments why it's actually more expensive not to carry insurance. The first is that the whole purpose of insurance is really to address those big claims, those things that kind of are out of the blue that you can't expect that come back to bite you. And
Right.
Again, going back to the statistic we shared earlier, when 80% of the claims against people in the industry are meritless, you're statistically likely to get something even if you are the best inspector in the world.
Yeah.
In fact, another statistic we haven't talked about yet is that over half of all inspectors will face at least one claim during their careers.
Mhm.
So if more than 1 in every 2 inspectors is getting at least one claim, you're just, the question becomes, do I want to go at it by myself or with help? So obviously, when you have the expertise of a specialized insurance company like us with experienced claims adjusters and attorneys like we've talked about, we're way more likely to be able to dismiss this at little to no cost to you, as opposed to you trying to defend it yourself or hire an attorney yourself, which can be a lot more expensive.
Right.
The second thing that I would bring up is similar to what you mentioned. I think the price of insurance is less of an issue if you are charging enough to mitigate your risk. So one of the things that we've seen as the space has gotten to be more competitive is some home inspectors' solutions are to be the low price guy, like I'm the inspector who's going to charge the least for my services, and that's how I'm going to capture business. But if you read any, books on business, it's just a fact that if you compete based on price, it's just a race to the bottom.
Yep.
And you will end up unable to sustain your various expenses and things. It's very difficult, especially in a service-based industry versus like a product-based industry. A product-based industry would be you sell shoes or something, right? In a service-based industry, it's really, really, really difficult to ride on price, just because if you don't see and put a dollar value to your services and your expertise, like other people won't either.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I mean, you shared your average annual cost. California is a little more expensive, and depending on the amount of inspections and things you do, there are all sorts of things that affect price that we can talk about if you wanted to. But looking at the entire nation, the average that most of our inspectors are paying is somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500 a year. So if when you're starting your business, you're putting that into your calculator as one of your business costs, just like you would business cards and equipment and tools and all of kind of those other things that you need, then you'll be able to figure out, okay, I need to be charging at least $350 an inspection to cover these costs and make a profit.
Yep. Business 101.
Which, I mean, I get it. I think a lot of people are attracted to the home inspection industry in part because of the ability to start your own business, be your own boss, control your schedule. I totally see the allure in those things, especially if you are somebody who comes from the trades with a lot of that knowledge and you want to spread that knowledge, use it to your advantage. But yeah, you have to have some of the business savvy that you can't get from your traditional continuing ed courses, and knowing how to price your services so that you can pay your expenses is one of those pieces of business savvy, which we actually have an article on pricing your inspections on our website too.
And I want to add to that. I want to add to that a bit too. With when it comes to home inspectors who want to just work for themselves, they may not have ever had a business before. So
Right.
once again, it's a learning curve, just like your software is a learning. My toughest thing when I did this was the software was a learning curve for me because I never had to deal with that type of software before in other past businesses or jobs. I just never did. But the business part for me was very easy because I'd had businesses in the past, so it was just kind of like a basic 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're up and running. But if you guys out there or girls out there don't have a business experience, then you should get help for that so people can set you up correctly, so you're covered correctly right from the beginning. Because I kind of agree and disagree with some of what you said a little while ago about but you're going by stats, so you're probably right. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Disagree with me. I am totally
no,
fine.
it's fine.
Questions
I'm
or
not
things,
going to.
do it.
I'm not going to say I disagree completely because it can easily go either way. But I look at when you first start being a home inspector is when you're most at risk because you are just learning and you don't have a system in place yet, unless, of course, you came from a multi-inspector firm where you already had training and you have a system in place that you already use. If you have that system in place of I do the kitchen first, then I do the bathrooms, then I do the attic. If you have all that and you stick to that routine, chances are I think you'll have less of a claim issue. That's something we didn't mention yet, so I guess I can get into that now.
So this is actually something you picked up on, and your instincts are correct. So back when we started doing this, and didn't have the statistics to back it up, we inferred, kind of based on how other insurance works, if you're a brand new driver, you're young and you have your first license, you're more likely to get in an accident than, some of the older guys who are more experienced. We assumed that was going to be the case with inspecting. It is and it isn't. So the correlation there is a little tricky. So there's some truth to the fact that in your first 3 years, you're more vulnerable, but there's a lot of things that impact how vulnerable you are.
Right.
And the big one that you mentioned, so there are two you mentioned. First is whether or not you had experience inspecting or even just being in the trades before. Right. That has a huge impact in whether or not and how much your vulnerability to claims is. Right. The second thing, which I'm really proud of you for picking up on, because I feel like a lot of home inspectors don't think about it. Do you have procedures so that when you inspect one house and then you inspect the next house, you start and end in the same places? You walk around the outside and then you go to the basement and then you do whatever your procedure is. You're checking things the same way every house, every time.
Yeah.
And once you get into multi-inspector firms, all your guys are doing that too. That is so important and makes such a huge difference in whether or not you're missing stuff. So yeah, those are, we used to think the correlation was a lot stronger. We're starting to think, okay, it's not as strong as we originally thought. The new guys aren't just destined to have more claims than the ones that have been around for a long time. Not necessarily anyway. It kind of depends on what their experience is and what procedures they have in place from the get-go. That's really where we kind of are able to determine whether there's an increase in liability and vulnerability or not.
And some new inspectors can also over-report, which is kind of like a blanket coverage. They've reported the things they have to report, and they went overboard and blanketed all these other little possible points that never arose because they actually did that. When I first started, I over-reported. But then again, it depends on who you're dealing with that day. If you're dealing with a realtor who's used to a minimalist inspection guy who just comes in and goes bing, 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 and he's out in 45 minutes, they may be looking at me and go, hey, you over-report. I'm like, why? Why do I over-report? What are you used to dealing with? The last inspector you used had, what, a 5-page report? It's just not right. So it all depends on who's at the party that day. You might get some criticism on that. But you know what? Another point I want to give to home inspectors is you have got to run your business the way you want to run your business. a lot of times you're going to get pushy realtors calling you, and they're going to try to sway you off your policies to get them, do them a favor. Oh, you do this for me, I'll get you 15 more inspections a month. That's a bunch of BS right there. I've heard that line so many times. And nowadays when I get that call, I'm just like, oh, wow, really? That's awesome. And I kind of just, patronize them a little bit because it's so ridiculous, the offer they're giving you. I'm like, ma'am, I'm already doing 30 houses a month. I'm one guy. I can't do any more. I don't need 15 more houses. So would you like me to come do that house for you tomorrow or not? It's kind of like that. So,
and that comes from the confidence that you have as a business owner and as an inspector, having been in it. I'm more sympathetic to some of the guys who are newer and are really struggling to drum up business. But I kind of think of it in terms of, I'm biased. I'm pregnant right now with my second one. So I think a lot
congratulations.
about thank you. Educating kids and also some of the things kids go through. Right. It's classic peer pressure, right? When you're being told to do one thing by a client or a real estate agent because it's going to be better for you. And I think the best way to prepare, and this is a part of risk management, is know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it before you run into that situation.
And stick to it.
You even mentioned in a lot of your stories so far, when you get phone calls and things like that, you have a form that you send to clients who have complaints so that they can fill it out with all of the information that you need to then address their complaint and address it with the insurance company and things like that. Right. Having that sort of preparation ahead of time is a really important risk management tool.
That's number one.
It allows you. Yeah, you can't wait until somebody is badgering you about your prices to come up with the reason why your price is what it is.
Right.
Same thing with, why the agreement has to be signed ahead of time. Like you should make sure that you think about your answers to those types of questions yourself so that you can better explain those things to your client, because it's much harder to do when you're put on the spot.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot there. I could easily get into helping guys market, but I don't think that's what this podcast is about.
Probably not, no. But it could be. You could have a marketing person on after me.
I'm doing I'm sure I haven't done a specific podcast on how I did it with marketing, but I touched on it on my last episode with another inspector I had sitting across from me, just kind of talking about random stuff and drinking some beer. It was kind of a really laid back podcast that day. I don't see you have a beer, but now I know why, because you're pregnant.
They didn't have a logo behind them and a podcast mic in front of them while they were talking to you.
That's hilarious. Let's see. What else did I want to cover here today? Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Anything that I might have overlooked?
I think we've talked about a lot of it. Like, we've touched on some really important points. I think so. I think the main thing I would want people to get out of this, or at least be, at least curious about and open to, is there's a lot of information out there and available to you about how you can limit your liability and manage your risk.
Yep.
And it's simple stuff. Like,
yes,
a lot of the things that you need to do aren't, these cataclysmic changes you need to make to the way that you're inspecting and doing business, at least hopefully not. Most of the time it's snapping a few extra pictures or investing in a software that emails the agreement ahead of time, or, taking us up on the fact that we have these agreements now that you can use.
You have them
but there are lots of resources out there. Go ahead.
Did you say you had state specific agreements? I'd like to see your California one.
I do. I have a couple, actually, depending.
Can you send me a California one? Because that's where I live.
Yes. And you get $1,000 off your deductible if you use the agreement, and you get a claim from an inspection with it. Yeah, we're that confident in it.
And a free claim, you said?
And if you combine it with some of our... other discounts, it could mean that you spend $0 even if it goes to court.
I think I didn't hear
Under
you say one
deductible.
thing. Did you say $1,000 off, and then did you say a free claim or something?
So we have multiple deductible discounts programs, all based on your risk management practices. So the first one is you can get a discount for consecutive years without claims. So every year you don't have a claim up to 5 years, you can get 10% off your deductible. Then we have the early reporting discount for using pre-claims assistance, which pre-claims assistance is exactly what it sounds like. It's a program that we have to stifle client complaints before they turn into claims. So for us, a claim is a written demand for money.
Right.
But if you're just getting a phone call, like yelling at you, that's not a claim yet, but it could turn into one. Let us help you resolve it for free. And if it does turn into a claim, we're not successful, then you at least get a discount. And then the third one is if you use one of our state-specific pre-inspection agreements that we put out this year, you can take not a percentage off, but $1,000 off. So if you combine all those three discounts with two of the deductibles, if you have the $1,500 or the $2,500, there's a good chance you pay $0 on your deductible. If you have the $5,000 deductible, you could get it as low as $250. But the point is, the idea is we're giving you incentives for basic risk management practices that you should already be doing to protect your business, because we're just confident that they work, and we'll put our money where our mouth is. And
sounds
if they
like
don't
it.
work and you still get a claim, we'll pay for it, is basically what we're saying. But yeah, with the agreements, these have been years in the making. We released them in January. I have looked at every single one, but more from like my English major and marketing background. Like I looked for grammar, and then I looked for nuances so I could talk about them on things like this. But the people actually writing them were attorneys. But yeah, we went through every single state, looked at what was out there, looked at what claims we had received again over the last 12 years or so, to see if there was any case law that we felt needed to be incorporated into it that would add or remove various provisions. And we're really, really proud of them. Obviously, we haven't had too long to test them out. Lots of our inspectors have been adopting them as their agreements as they renew their insurance for the year. But we're really, really excited about them.
Okay. Well, if you guys are handling it, and it's, the legal side of it comes your way and you're comfortable with them, that's a lot to be said right there.
Yeah. As far as I know, we're the only insurance company that has put together pre-inspection agreements for home inspectors. I know there are some franchises and associations that have done agreements, but they haven't been state specific, unless of course the franchise or association is state specific, and they haven't incorporated claims case law like we have, simply because they haven't had access to it.
Well, so, it sounds to me like your company is doing the right things, and you're taking the preemptive approach. And if you guys keep pushing that onto your inspectors, it's going to have a trickle down effect, and then everyone's going to catch on. And to me, it's common sense. It's just, look, why walk into a situation with all these open doors when you can walk in with only one open, the one you have to walk through? You know what I mean? Don't leave all these openings. And that's what I think a lot of inspectors do. They just leave themselves open to problems by not doing this or doing this way. So yeah, I think you guys got a good thing going there. Everything you just said makes a lot of sense to me, and that's good marketing for getting more business. So anybody listening, you better get signed up with InspectorPro, because they're actually doing things, and they're doing things to help us. So I would definitely give them a call. And who do they ask for?
So if you're interested, go to our website, InspectorProInsurance.com. We have our application there, so you could apply for Errors Omissions insurance and general liability insurance. So again, those are if you're accused of being negligent. And then general liability, which we didn't talk about very much.
That's right. We need to. Can you mention that real quick?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So not as common as errors and omissions claims, but still really important. So general liability is when you cause bodily injury or property damage during your inspection. So the most common ones, again, water damage is really common, but this is different. So the most common water damage general liability claim when we're talking about that is you're inspecting a system, let's say the tub, you leave it running, walk out of the bathroom to go inspect something else while the tub fills up. It overflows and you flooded the place. Yeah. Our worst, it may not be the worst ever, but this one came in last year and it was very memorable. It was a condo inspection. And it was like a multi-level, almost like an apartment complex, but it was technically a condo. He's on the 5th floor and he turned the water on, and literally every single unit, all the communal spaces, their like basement area where they had just like their stuff. Anyway, wow. He flooded that entire place. That was a lovely general liability claim to deal with. Another common one, power outages, actually. So if you trip the GFCI, my favorite story about this was a narrow like escape for us and the inspector because it ended up getting dropped. But so what happened was the home inspector was testing the exterior wall outlets. He tripped the GFCI breaker in the garage. And there was a bunch of stuff. He knew he did it, but there was a bunch of stuff in the garage, so he couldn't locate the wall outlet to reset the GFCI. Yeah. So he just made a note of it in his report. I was like, hey, I couldn't turn this back on. We know why this is going to be a problem because, again, people do not read reports at all or immediately sometimes. So the problem was the person who read the report, they either overlooked the trip breaker or they didn't read it in time. But the seller was a scientist and had rare seeds in this refrigerator. Oh, I'm talking $500,000 worth of rare seeds in these garage refrigerators. So that was the claim that landed on our desk, and we were like, ah! But thankfully, the seller dropped the claim for reasons unrelated to the inspection. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the company that the seller worked for that dealt with these rare seeds, they had insurance that they were able to tap into and use instead of blaming the inspector. But it could have been a $500,000 claim that he was liable for.
Well, my input on that is this: shame on the scientist for plugging a refrigerator into a GFCI receptacle in the first place. That's just not a good idea. Anybody with a home and you have a garage with a GFCI, don't plug your refrigerator in there and go on vacation, because you may come back to all your perishable goods being, just no good anymore. And then to the inspector, was he pushing the button on his tester? Is that why he tripped that thing? Because it was on a...
I don't know. I don't remember the specifics, but he did something.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend doing that, guys. We've all done it. Look, I've done it in the past, and I realized, you know what? I can't find this breaker. I mean, this GFCI, I couldn't find it anywhere in the house. And I had to tell him. But what I do, my advice for that, if you come across that where you've tripped something and you can't find it, make sure you tell everybody there before you leave that you need to
call them.
Yes, you need to make sure you tell them. Don't just put it in your report and just forget to tell them on the way out, because they're going to come home and expect their stuff to be on. That's a bad one. So yeah, I would just make sure you tell everybody in the house.
Yeah. The other thing that's really common where we've seen it be an issue is with hunters. That's when we run into an issue. So again, they trip a breaker or cause some sort of power outage, and we've got freezers full of meat that
Yeah.
people got from hunting. That's another like weirdly common one.
And now your first offense can be from your place is, what are you doing plugging your refrigerator into a GFCI?
Right, but you can't control what your sellers are doing. But next most common general liability claim, ceiling holes. So literally you're putting your foot through the ceiling when you're walking around up there. That's really common. And then fourth, now if you want to read a lot of like interesting comments and discussion, this is other than like the top claims articles generally, our most talked about article series was our garage door series. Do you remember this one? Did you read our garage door series?
Oof, I don't remember.
It came from this. We wrote a 2-part article series on garage doors after this top general liabilities claims list came out. And it's because another common general liability claim in our experience, the fourth most common is it comes from you doing the performance test on the garage.
Right.
When you do the auto reverse pressure activated test, whether you're doing it with 2x4 or your hands, whatever, it's during that auto reverse test that something breaks and then the inspector is held liable for that garage door. So in our 2-part series, we go over all the ways to do the test and then various associations and home inspectors' opinions on whether or not you should or shouldn't do the test. And people got, my lights are turning on me.
Yeah, it just came.
But people got,
it's back on. Yeah.
People got very heated and very excited about their opinions on the auto reverse test.
Was that on Facebook?
Not even just like people whether or not you should perform it, but the how to perform it, whether you should do it with your hands or a 2x4. Like people were getting nasty to each other and making arguments for various ways.
I do not use 2x4s to test garage doors. If it's an auto reverse by, if it's that type without the electric eyes, then I'll just grab it with my hands, just give it a little resistance, and if it's going to work, it's going to work. But I don't get that into it like that. I test the door my own way, but I haven't had any issues yet.
And then the last one was is frozen plumbing. So similar to, a power outage happens, but this could even be, you're testing the HVAC system, you forget to turn the heat on, and it's the middle of winter and you live somewhere like not California and it gets really cold and the cellars are out for a while and their pipes freeze and burst. Or it's like more common is it's an unoccupied home and you left the heat off when you left.
Oh, got it.
And because it's vacant, it has time to get cold enough where the pipes are burst. Yeah. And then there's a lot of damage that comes from
I don't have that problem.
So those are our top general liability claims. Notice how most of them are property damage. We don't deal with that many bodily injury claims. However, when we do, they're some of the most expensive claims we get, if you can imagine.
Yeah. I was going to ask you.
If you're hurting somebody during your inspection.
I was going to ask you, have you had any claims yet with drones giving clients haircuts, stuff like that?
So we have had at least one claim that I know of where a drone ran into somebody. It wasn't like severe. Okay. I think they got like a little scratch on their arm, but yeah, not anything crazy yet. Most home inspectors, at least in our experience, thankfully, like have been pretty smart and have followed our advice to get some training on using their drones before they go and bring them to an inspection. So we haven't actually seen a lot of drone injury claims. We see a lot more of what you talked about earlier in the podcast, people following inspectors up their ladders.
Yeah. Don't let them do that. You got to just...
Yeah. The sign thing is great. Yeah. So like having a sticker, having a sign. We know people who use cones. That is not a bad idea either. And it's not just keeping them off the roof, but keeping them out of the crawl space, keeping them out of the attic.
Yep.
Just telling people, hey, this area that I'm about to inspect, it's not safe.
Yeah, one
Or you're
time,
not like wearing the appropriate like attire to get right next to this electrical panel.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
right. So here's a quick little story for you. I had a house to do. It was a mid-century, one-level, single-family home. It's pretty big, but I could only put my ladder up in certain areas just because the way it was built up against the hillside and stuff. And when I had to set up my ladder, it had to be steep, like almost straight up. And I didn't like climbing it, first of all, because of that.
Right.
It's dangerous for me. But I used a lot of caution. I knew what I was doing. And then I walk across the roof, and this is a pretty big house, so the roof's pretty big. It's a flat roof. And I turn around, and I'm looking at something. I hear somebody say, I'm like, what the hell's talking to me? I turn around. My doctor client is on the roof. I'm like, what are you doing up? I'm like, what are you doing up here? He said, what do you mean? I said, you shouldn't have climbed my ladder. He goes, oh, the realtor told me I could climb your ladder. Oh, I wish you were there. I wish you were there for that one. I wish somebody videotaped me school this young realtor up and down. I was all over him. I said, don't you ever tell someone to climb someone's ladder again. You know the liability we're talking about here? And it was like this.
Yeah.
My ladder was like this. So that
goodness.
Yeah. So if you're a realtor, don't tell the customers to climb ladders, and it's just not good. It's just not good. So yeah, that's why it's important to put stickers on there. And people ask, can I follow you around? No, I don't want you following me around either. Do you guys ever have problems with that? Like customers following the contractor around? I mean, the inspector around?
I mean, so we touched on it. We asked about it during preparation for one of our other articles on, whether or not it's good to have a client present at the inspection or not.
Right.
And people talking about one of the negatives is maybe that issue is they're trying to get into places where they shouldn't. And again, it goes back to this, have your rules before you start the inspection.
Yeah.
So you kind of know how to handle clients who are following, like, you can follow me into these areas or not. Or, hey, you're not allowed to follow me at all, but I will give you a walkthrough at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Like, just have your rule ahead of time and then stick to it and just be like, these are my rules. You're way better off establishing that kind of stuff ahead of time. But speaking of ladders and danger and stuff like that, the last kind of insurance that we do sell, which we started 2 or 3 years ago, we sell workers' compensation for home inspectors as well. So especially multi-inspector firms who want to keep their clients safe, not their clients, their inspectors safe too.
Right.
That is something definitely to look at. And we do articles on safety as well. So we actually have an article on ladder safety. We have an article. When's it coming out?
Well, I got a few pointers for you on that ladder safety if you haven't thought of it already.
Sure.
Be careful with those telescoping ladders when you're using them for roofs, because they have a smooth metal surface, and if they touch the gutter, they get two smooth surfaces touching, and when you step off, the ladder can get kicked out from under you. It almost happened to me once, but my cat-like reflexes saved my butt, and I just grabbed on real quick, so that saved me from that. But so at that point, I no longer use that to get on a roof. I use a little giant, and I have rubber strips on the bottom on the back of the ladder that touch the gutter, so there's no slippage at all. Because that was scary. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Ladders are no joke, and unfortunately, we hear about a lot of our inspectors and other inspectors. I mean, you see it on Facebook all the time. Guys falling off of roofs and off of ladders. It's just a common way to get injured. Yeah. But yeah, we've done articles on that. We've done articles on electrical safety. The one I was looking up. So on the 15th of this month, we have our snakes article coming out. That was actually by the request of some other inspectors that we had interviewed for other things, how to stay safe.
Would that be like Louisiana or North Carolina or something like that, where all the snakes are?
Yeah, a lot of the like Florida and Louisiana people had like a lot to say. I hate snakes. I didn't even want to look at the pictures that we included in the articles identifying the snakes. But yeah, so we're trying to put out content that's helpful for that element of risk management too, just staying safe during your inspections. But yeah, it was partially inspired by, we did an infographic a couple years ago on animal attacks, in part because there was a home inspector in the industry. Again, this was really huge on Facebook, who got mauled by 3 dogs during an inspection. Ooh. It was awful. Wow. It was really, really terrible. And it kind of sparked this conversation about, what do you even do when there are potentially dangerous animals, particularly dogs, but also other animals on the property? So we did a bunch of interviews and some research and put together an infographic on that. But one of the animals that was brought up that was somewhat regionally specific, but not as much as like gators and bears, which were other ones that were brought up. Is people encountering bears and gators.
Yeah, that happens. That happens up in this area, up in the mountains area, La Cañada, Flint Ridge. I've actually
the first guy who was talking to me about it was in Northern California. Yeah,
so over here, well, this is Southern California. It's just the foothills area of Southern California what I'm talking about. And one day I remember going to a job in that area, and I saw a bear across the street. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I was afraid to get under the house and come out and have this thing staring at me. So I'm like scoping the neighborhood every couple of minutes going, is this thing going to sneak up on me or what? That's a little jarring when there's a black bear just cruising around the street like doot. But real quick, I want to tell you about a funny snake story that recently happened to me.
Oh, no. Okay.
I never see snakes. I never see snake skins. I don't see any of that. I've never seen that. But
what part of California are you in again?
I'm in Los Angeles area, Southern California.
Oh, okay, because I grew up in Los Angeles. Yeah, you don't see snakes.
Yeah, so basically, I get this phone call from one of my customers. She goes, so John, thanks for the report and everything. I'm like, okay, so what's going on? She goes, well, the termite guy was under the house, and he said he saw snake trails underneath the house. And I'm like, oh really? So I said, well, let me check my pictures, but I don't recall seeing any snake trails. So as I'm starting to open the folders for my pictures, I'm thinking, is he referring to my little robot tracks from my little crawl bot I use underneath the house? That's what it was. He thought my crawl bot, the wheels for my crawl bot were snake tracks. And I was laughing. So I called the client back and said, you know what? I think he's referring to this. And I showed her a picture and she started laughing. So she was like, do I need to get a snake specialist out here? I said, no, I think you're good.
Yeah. Because you don't want snakes in your house. The worst snake story I had heard, we used to do this. We don't do it anymore because we have our funny home inspection story contest every year. That's coming up. But we did for a couple years a spooky home inspection story contest. It just wasn't as popular. So we stopped doing it after a couple years. But the one that won one year was actually a guy in Australia. And he got stuck. Like he got his foot caught in something. He might have put his foot through the ceiling, or maybe it got stuck somewhere else. He got stuck in the attic. And Australia, just giant poisonous snake. He watches it devouring like a rodent in one corner of the attic, and it's slithering over him to get to it.
Whoa.
And he's just like losing his mind, scared. Thankfully, people heard him and were able to help get him out.
Wow.
But yeah, I was like, oh, not fun. But anyway, that's coming out on the 15th. If you're worried about snakes on your inspections.
Yeah.
And then people have good stories to share, can share them with us on social media.
You need to check out, if you haven't already, check out my YouTube channel. I got some great crawl space videos on there of what I find under houses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Some of the funny home inspection story submissions have been things that people find in crawl spaces that they initially think are scary, and then it ends up being funny.
Yeah.
Like weird doll collections. Or I won't spoil one, but there was one guy who the home inspector, the real estate agent, and the buyer all thought that he had found buried treasure. And he did find something, but it was not what when they opened the box, it was not what they expected. So I'll let you go read that one.
All right. I'll check it out. But hey, you know what? I think we're good. I think we covered everything. I want to thank you again for taking the time, because we just done almost 2 hours here.
I know, but it's so much fun. There's so much to talk about.
When you can converse and have good stuff, like I tell all my guests, you know what? It could be an hour, it could be 2. As long as you're having fun and we're just talking, there's no rush. There's no rush at all.
Well, great. I appreciate you having me. And yeah, anytime, if you end up having more questions, or if you get questions submitted and want me to come back to answer stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a million things we could still talk about.
Now that I've formally met you, I will keep you in mind when any type of insurance stuff comes up. And if I can help out with your education part and trying to help everybody get through this thing we call inspections better, then I'm all for it, because that's what I try to do. I'm trying to educate people. And I learn new stuff all the time. So I don't know everything, but I absorb a lot.
There's a business guy named Simon Sinek. And he wrote a series of books, like the most popular one, and he has a TED Talk about this. It's called Start With Why. And the premise of the book is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think the reason that home inspectors who are educators are successful, and one of the reasons we've been successful as an insurance company, is because we actually have the same why as our home inspectors. Our why is we want to use our expertise and our knowledge to educate home inspectors so that they can better manage their risk. And the reason that works so well is home inspectors have the same one for their clients. They want to use their expertise and their knowledge to help their clients manage their risk when they're buying homes.
Right. Yep.
So, yeah, we're actually like really on the same page when it comes to why we do what we do, even if it looks like kind of different on the outside.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's it, man. So John here from Home Inspection Authority, and I want to thank again my special guest, Stephanie Jaynes.
Well, great meeting you.
Yeah,
we'll talk soon. Bye.
Okay, just a friendly reminder. If you're buying a home, don't panic. Home Inspection Authority's got you covered. You can schedule us online by going to homeinspectionauthority.com 24/7. You can call us at 800-950-8184. We offer general home inspections, mold inspections and testing, sewer camera inspections, indoor air quality testing, swimming pool and spa inspections, and light commercial inspections. We use specialized tools to provide the most thorough inspection possible, such as drone for roof inspections that are not accessible, crawlbot for under homes and tight crawl spaces to get to those areas otherwise not accessible, and we use thermal imaging technology as well. So give us a call at 800-950-8184. Like I said, you can schedule online at homeinspectionauthority.com 24/7.